What's going on, people? So welcome to episode 1 of the Wildman Origins. This is a video I've mentioned in past videos that I've been wanting to do. Now this is going to be a multiple part series. I don't know how much parts there's going to be, but what I'm going to do, however many parts they are, I'm going to release all of those parts in one big video. But with that being said, we're going to go over the Wildman, the origins, who they are, how they lived, what have you. So with all of that being said, as usual, please subscribe to this channel, like the video now if you can, it will help me out. Yeah, let's get straight into it. Okay, so now with all of that being said, I now want you brothers and the few sisters that are listening to please focus your attention to the image that you currently see in the background. Now this is a tapestry dated from the 13th, 14th century, and it's titled Wildman versus the Moors. So we're going to use this tapestry as a backdrop to touch on and go in on the wild people. But like I said, it's titled the Wildman versus the Moors. So what does that denote? That obviously denotes one group of people have to be the Moors and one group of people have to be the Wildmen. So let's analyze both groups of people. First, we're going to analyze the group that is inhabiting the castle. So to the right, let's zoom in. As you can see, brothers, sisters, you can see the king, the queen, the princess, the knights, the soldiers, are all black, different shades of brown. Now, as we can see, they are defending their castle from some invaders. We can see the soldiers here. We can see the bow and arrows targeting a group of people. We can see them getting behind cover here. On the top of the castle, in the towers, the sentry towers, we can see another knight here, soldier, with their bow and arrow, ready to defend. We can see these two brown figures here, sounding the alarm. So, who are they defending their castle from? Who are the invaders? Let's take a look. So over to the left. Now look at this group of people here. Like we can see, they're undressed, they have excessive unkempt body hair, and they're charging through the forest with sticks, clubs, and rocks. As you can see, the sticks, the clubs, the rocks. Now look at their complexion compared to the complexion of the people in the castle. Now, just given by the nature of this group of people here charging for the forest, they seem a bit wild, right? Charging for the forest with sticks and clubs. So I take it that this group of people here are the wild men, and the people in the castle are the Moors. Now, this tapestry in and of itself completely destroys and goes against the narrative that is generally taught about history. Now, I'm talking from the standpoint of, brothers, keep in mind this was around the medieval time period. Shouldn't this be the time period where so-called black people are living in their huts and their shacks, while this group of people should be in castles, civilized, inventing and creating everything? Yet this completely goes against that narrative. But brothers, this was the reality, as I've mentioned before, going into that 200 AD period all the way up to the early 1800s, so-called black people was in rulership. And the Caucasians, this is the state that they were in, especially during that prime dark age period. They were known as the wild men and wild men. Oh, sorry, wild men and wild women, the wild people. They crawled around on all fours. They lived in caves. They lived amongst animals. They were in their base state. Now, with that being said, but this is why they have to go for great lengths to cover up history. But with that being said, one of the major questions that's going to come out of this, okay, KMZ, or what you Americans may say, KMZ, what happened if this was the reality? If so-called black people were in rulership, how did they lose? How did they get wiped out of Europe? Obviously, so-called black people, if they were the ones in rulership, they will have access to swords, knives, maces, bow and arrows. How did they lose to a bunch of nude, excessive bodily haired people charging through the forest with sticks and clubs? What the heck happened? Well, to make a long story short, brothers, one of the main catalysts that led to so-called black people being wiped out of Europe was actually due to a lot of the plagues and diseases that was going on in Europe. And of course, the most famous one was the Black Death. Now, the main catalyst that led to the Black Death was actually spread by these people here influxing into mainland Europe, and this led to a lot of so-called black people being wiped out of Europe. Now I know they tell you in conventional history that it was spread by rats. Of course they're going to tell you that, just like they're going to tell you that the wild men, the wild people, are mythological creatures. Okay, so now brothers, I'm kind of jumping ahead a bit, but apart from a lot of the diseases and plagues that were spreading across Europe that dwindled so-called black people's numbers, a lot of what led to so-called black people's numbers dwindling in Europe was a lot of the infighting that was going on between the nobility, all of those wars. But before we get to that, I'm going to touch on some of the conditions that the wild people were living in. Now, this is a book titled The Wildman, Medieval Myth and Symbolism. Now, of course, brothers, the wild men, the wild people are not mythological creatures. It was actually a reality, okay? It was the time period where they were in their base condition. But let me show you some information in this book. So peep this. By every account, I'm going to read slow so you guys can grasp this. By every account, the wild man's behavior matched his primitive surroundings. Strong enough to uproot trees, he was violent and aggressive, not only against wild animals, but also his own kind. His brutish, contentious nature expressed itself in a natural combativeness against which neither beast nor man was equal. Though his club and sometimes only his bare hands, like I said, brothers, let's go back to the tapestry. As we can see, the wild people here, the wild men, charging for the forest with their sticks and their clubs, just like it stated, 1-to-1. And where was I? Yeah. Though his club and sometimes only his bare hands was his only weapon, which, with his instinctive knowledge of the ways of the wild beast, the wild man was a skilled hunter. Now, as you can see, I've got this part highlighted, the skill hunter. Now, the reason why I've got skill hunter highlighted, brothers, you're going to realize when it comes to the wild man, a lot of his characteristics and his nature actually matches with Esau. but more on that later. But in spite of his physical supremacy, shrank from contact with humans. Yes, brothers, because they were driven from amongst men. Like I said, going into that 200 AD period, after the fall of Imperial Rome, a huge portion of them were driven away to the Caucasus regions. But more on that later also. Where was I? Yeah, shrank from contact with humans and frequently even with his own kind. Indeed, his inept social abilities. Brothers, when they fell into their base state, they had no language, okay? They communicated with noises and grunts. But let's keep reading. Apparently, limited him only to cooperative union required for procreation. Lacking agriculture, he was forced to eke out a substance from hunting and gathering. Thought to crawl around on all fours. Yes, brothers, sisters, they also crawled around on all fours. Like you're gonna come to realize, brothers, this is why they have to go through such extent rewriting of history. Like, you guys don't truly understand why they tell the lies that they do in history. Let's keep reading. Thought to crawl around on all fours. He scratched tubers and roots from the ground, picked berries, and gnawed on verdure. When he killed game, he ate it completely raw. They love themselves that bloody red meat, man. Let's keep reading. So by many accounts, the Wildman also indulged in cannibalism. By the 16th century, this habit brought him into association with werewolves and other flesh eaters. Now you see how downtrodden they were as a base people. And don't worry, brothers, we got way more information to go about or read about the Wildman. This is not even scratching the tip of the iceberg. So he was in association with werewolves and other flesh eaters. Wild men were commonly thought to abduct children, but often only to fulfill parental instincts. Instances of wild folk substituting changelings for human children are also recorded. Although he was a hunter, the wild man was frequently hunted. Yes, brothers, because the nobility of our people would hunt the wild man down. But more on that later. Like I said, I'm kind of jumping ahead now, but I'm reading this first to set a precedence. So illustrations of the 14th century depict the wild man on all fours, at bay, pursued by hounds and hunters on horseback. Incapable of speech, the wild man muttered only unintelligible sounds or none at all. One more time, brothers. That's those grunting noises that and ooga ooga. You know what the irony of all of this is, brothers? All of these things that you read here, isn't this what they solely project onto so-called black people? Very ironic. But like I said, brothers, I've kind of jumped ahead now. We need to take it back to the beginning. Okay, so I said we need to take it back to the beginning. What beginning am I talking about? Brothers, I'm pretty much talking about the start of Caucasian rulership. It was through this man here, Alexander the Great, also known as Alexander the Greek or Alexander the Macedonian. It was through him pretty much started like a great foothold in the earth of Caucasian rulership. Now, it was like pioneered by his father, Philip II, because his father was a strong military leader and it took over a lot of local territories. But it didn't really kick off like as a major world power until Alexander the Great rose after the passing of his father. And brothers, this is why they laud Alexander the Great up so much, because the people in the know, the people in rulership right now, the elite, they know that through Alexander it was the start of their rulership, pretty much. Because brothers, prior to Alexander, when it comes to the original Greeks, there were a people of color, okay? Brothers, the Minoans, the ancient Italians, Etruscans, people of Pompeii, Crete. Brothers, throughout the Mediterranean, all of those lands were originally inhabited by people of color. Now don't worry, I'm going to show artifacts and relics proving what I just stated. So we're going to take a look at an overview of the conquest of Alexander. So Alexander the Great, who ruled from 336 to 323 BC, was a Macedonian king known for his military genius and vast conquest. He successfully united Greece, then went on to conquer the Persian Empire, Egypt, and parts of the Indian subcontinent, creating an empire that spanned 3 continents and covered approximately 2 million square miles. So the conquest of Alexander the Great, from one of the most remarkable military campaigns in history. Within a span of just over a decade, Alexander, the king of Macedonia, created one of the largest empires of the ancient world, stretching from Greece to India. Here's an overview of his major conquests and their significance. So jumping down. So timeline of major campaigns. 334 BCE, Battle of Granicus. Alexander's first significant victory over the Persian Empire, marking the beginning of his campaign in Asia Minor. 333 BCE, Battle of Issus. A decisive battle where Alexander defeated King Darius III of Persia, leading to the conquest of southern Asia Minor. 332 BCE, the Siege of Tyre. After a 7-month siege, Alexander captured the island city of Tyre, a crucial Phoenician stronghold. 332 BCE, Conquest of Egypt. Alexander was welcomed as a liberator and founded the city of Alexandria, which became a major center of learning. 331 BCE, the Battle of Gargamella. A decisive victory over Darius III, leading to the fall of the Persian Empire and Alexander's declaration as King of Asia. 327 to 325 BCE, Campaign in India. Alexander crossed the Hindu Kush and fought the Battle of the Hydaspes against King Porus. His troops, exhausted and longing to return home, refused to march further east. 324 BCE, returned to Babylon. Alexander returned to Babylon, where he initiated plans for further conquest and conducted a mass marriage ceremony to unite Macedonian and Persian cultures. And 323 BCE, death in Babylon. Alexander died in June 323 BCE at the age of 32, leading to the fragmentation of his empire amongst his generals. More on his generals later. But yeah, brothers, that's just a quick overview of the conquest of Alexander. Is there anything else I want to read here? Yeah, we can read this. Legacy. Hellenistic era. His empire spread Greek culture, language, and ideas across 3 continents. Founded over 20 cities, example Alexandria in Egypt, that became centers of learning and culture. After his death, his generals split the empire into several Hellenistic kingdoms. Like I said, we're going to touch on his generals. So now where also can you find the conquest of Alexander the Great? You can actually find these brothers in the Bible, in the scriptures. Now with that being said, I want to directly speak to you atheists that may be on my channel. Some of you brothers and sisters that are in the modern day church systems, and for those of you who are 50-50, you kind of believe but you kind of don't. Real history, brothers, and the scriptures, they go hand in hand. It's just that you've been taught the scriptures from a modern day religious standpoint, and you don't know who's who in the scriptures, so a lot of things go over your head. Like, just for one example, when you read the scriptures, it prophesies that when the holy people return back to the land of Israel, there's going to be peace on the earth. Now, allegedly, the holy people returned back in 1948. Now, let me ask you, is there peace on the earth? Even to this day, 2025, when you look over in that landmass, what's going on there, even when you just turn on the news? So now for those of you who don't know who's who in the scriptures, you read a prophecy like that and you say, see, the scriptures is fake, the Bible's fake, the holy people returned and there's no peace on the earth. That's because what's taking place, brothers, is a form of identity fraud. They're not the holy people. One more time, it's important to know who you are and who they are. Now, hopefully, over this course of this series, when I link real history with the scriptures, a lot of you brothers and sisters who are, who are on the fence or who are atheists, hopefully you guys get it. But with that being said, brothers, we just read the conquest and the dominance of Alexander the Great. Now we're going to read it verbatim in the scriptures. So this is the Apocrypha, the book of Maccabees, first chapter. So Alexander the Great. So it reads, after Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came from the land of Kittim, had defeated, one second. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me start over. So after Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came from the land of Kittim, had defeated King Darius of the Persians. Now, brothers, we just read that Alexander had defeated Darius and he had victory over the Persians. Here it is in the scriptures. So, Persians and the Medes. He succeeded him as king. He had previously become king of Greece. He fought many battles, conquered strongholds. Now, we've just read all of the conquest of Alexander the Great, the strongholds that he took over, the land masses and what have you. Here it is in the scriptures one more time. So he fought many battles, conquered strongholds, and slaughtered the kings of the earth. He advanced to the ends of the earth and plundered many nations. When the earth became quiet before him, he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. He gathered a very strong army and ruled over countries, nations, and princes, and they paid him tribute. One more time, brothers, the dominance of Alexander the Great in the scriptures. Now, when it comes to Alexander the Great and our people, Alexander and our people had a working relationship. It's not until Alexander passed away and his 4 generals took over, that being Lysimachus, Seleucus, Ptolemy, and Cassander, is where our people's problems started to ramp up, specifically through Seleucid line and Ptolemy. Okay, so I mentioned that Alexander and our people had a working relationship. So now we are in the book Antiquities of the Jews by Josephus. Now, for those of you who don't have this on a PDF, or if you don't have a physical copy, you can find this on archive.org. Now, we're on page 349. Now, given context going into this, basically, Alexander is now heading towards Jerusalem. Now, of course, the people and the high priest were worried because prior, Alexander asked the high priest to send him rations and provisions, but the high priest rejected his offer because the high priest already had a promise to Darius. Now, upon hearing this, Alexander was mad. So, of course, now that Alexander is heading towards Jerusalem, they were worried what he was going to do. But we're going to get the context going into all of that. So, page 349, jumping down. What do we want? Okay. So Alexander came into Syria and took Damascus, and when he had obtained Zidon and besieged Tyre, when he sent an epistle to the Jewish high priest to send him some auxiliaries and to supply his armies with provisions, and that what presents he formerly sent to Darius, he would now send to him and choose the friendship of the Macedonians. So basically, Alexander was like, all those provisions, soldiers, supplies, what have you, that you're sending to Darius, now send them to me. So let's see how the high priest responded. One second. So the high priest responded and said, but the high priest answered the messengers that he had given his oath to Darius not to bear arms against him, and he said that he would not transgress this while Darius was in the land of the living. So let's see how Alexander responded. Upon hearing this answer, Alexander was very angry, and though he determined not to leave Tyre, which was just ready to be taken, yet as soon as he had taken it, he threatened that he would make an expedition against the Jewish high priest, and through him teach all men to whom they must keep their oaths. Okay, so now keep that in the back of your mind. Alexander made an inquiry to the high priest to send him provisions, soldiers, rations, what have you. The high priest rejected this because he already had an oath with Darius. Alexander didn't like his response, so he was mad, he was angry, and he said he was going to make an example out of the high priest and lead an expedition towards the high priest. So now we're going to jump down to where Alexander is now heading towards Jerusalem. So as it reads, now Alexander, when he had taken Gaza, made haste to go up to Jerusalem, and Jaddua, the high priest, when he heard that, was in agony and under terror, as not knowing how he should meet the Macedonians, since the king was displeased at his foregoing disobedience. He therefore ordained that the people should make supplications and should join with him in offering sacrifices to the Most High, Yahweh, whom he besought to protect that nation and to deliver them from the perils that were coming upon them. Whereupon the Most High warned him in a dream, that being Jaddua, which came upon him after he had offered sacrifice, that he should take courage and adorn the city and open the gates, that the rest should appear in white garments, but that he and the priest should meet the king in the habits proper to their order, without the dread of any ill consequences, which the providence of the Most High would prevent. So basically, the people and the priest offered sacrifices unto the Most High to entreat the Most High to protect the city from Alexander. What's going to happen? The Most High came to Judea, the high priest, in a dream, told him everything's going to be okay. Open the gates, receive Alexander, and no harm should come to you. So let's read on. So upon which, when he rose from his sleep, that being Judea the high priest, he greatly rejoiced and declared to all the warning he had received from the Most High, according to which dream he acted entirely, and so waited for the coming of the king. And when he understood that he was not far from the city, he went out in procession with the priest and the multitude of the citizens. The procession was venerable, and the manner of it different from that of other nations. It reached to a place called Sapa or Safa, which name translated into Greek signifies a prospect for you, have thence a prospect both of Jerusalem and of the temple. And when the Phoenicians and the Chaldeans that followed him thought they should have liberty to plunder the city and torment the high priest to death, which the king's displeasure fairly promised them, the very reverse of it happened. So the men that were with Alexander thought they were going to raid and plunder the city, but the opposite happened. So the very reverse of it happened. For Alexander, when he saw the multitude at the distance in white garments, while the priest stood clothed in fine linen, and the high priest in purple and scarlet clothing, with his mitre on his head, having the golden plate whereupon the name of the Most High was engraved, he approached by himself and adored that name, of course that being the name of the Most High, and first saluted the high priest. The Jews also did all together with one voice salute Alexander and compass him about, whereupon the kings of Syria and the rest were surprised at what Alexander had done and supposed him disordered in his mind. Because like I said, they thought they were going over there to Jerusalem to raid and plunder the city, but here Alexander is greeting the high priest and the high priest is greeting him, and they seem to be cordial. So the men with Alexander were like, what the heck is going on? Is Alexander crazy? Did something mental come over him? So supposed him disordered in his mind. However, Parmenio alone went up to him and asked him how it came to pass that which all the others adored him, he should adore the high priest of the Jews, to whom he replied, I did not adore him, but that the Most High who had honored him with his high priesthood. For I saw this very person in a dream, in this very habit, when I was at Dios in Macedonia, who, when I was considering with myself how I might obtain the dominion of Asia, exhorted me to make no delay, but boldly to pass over the sea thither, for that he would conduct my army and would give me the dominion over the Persians. Whence it is that having seen no other in that habit, and now seeing this person in it, and remembering that vision and the exhortation which I had had in my dream, I believe that I bring this army under under the divine conduct, and shall and therewith conquer Darius and destroy the power of the Persians, and that all things will succeed according to what is in mine own mind. So, brothers, the Most High also came to Alexander the Macedonian in a dream and told him he was going to succeed and he was going to defeat the Persians. One more time, brothers, linking real history with the scriptures, because you can also, of course, find secular history about Alexander conquering the Persians. Keep in mind, brothers, this was also prophesied in the book of Daniel when it talks about the he-goat, the rough goat. That was talking about Alexander and him conquering the Persians. And when he had said this to Parmenio, and had given the high priest his right hand, the priest ran along by him, and he came into the city. And when he went up into the temple, he offered sacrifices to the Most High according to the high priest's direction. So Alexander went into the city. Him and the high priest went to the temple, and the high priest was showing Alexander how to sacrifice unto the Most High, how to do it correctly. So he offered sacrifice unto the Most High according to the high priest's direction, and magnificently treated both the high priest and the priest. And when the book of Daniel was shown to him, that, brothers, I just mentioned the book of Daniel one more time. Alexander was prophesied in the book of Daniel and his defeat and his conquering over the Persians. And here you have Judua the high priest showing Alexander that he's being prophesied. So, and when the book of Daniel was shown him, where Daniel declared that one of the Greeks should destroy the empire of the Persians, he supposed that himself was the person intended. One more time, brothers, that rough goat, that he-goat, the horn, was talking about Alexander. And I'm going to get that part in the book of Daniel later on in this series. And he was then glad. He dismissed the multitude for the present, but the next day he called them to him and bade them what favors they pleased of him. Whereupon the high priest desired that they might enjoy their laws of their forefathers, and might pay no tribute on the 7th year. He granted all they desired, and when they entreated him that he would permit the Jews in Babylon and Media to enjoy their own laws also, he willingly promised to do hereafter what they desired. And when he said to the multitude that if any of them would enlist themselves in his army on this condition, that they should continue under the laws of their forefathers and live according to them, he was willing to take them with him. Many were ready to accompany him in his wars. So here you have Alexander, of course, just to wrap everything up, being shown in the book of Daniel that he was prophesied. And then after he was shown all of this, he gave favor unto the Israelites, asked them any favors. They asked him, they wanted to continue in their laws and their customs. And basically, if any Israelites enlisted in Alexander's armies, they will also get to follow their laws and their customs. So one more time, Alexander and our people had a working relationship. Now, later on, I'm going to go into the book of Daniel, where it talks about Alexander. And we're also going to touch on his 4 generals after he passed away, because like I mentioned, after Alexander passed away and his 4 generals took over, that is where our people's problems started to unfold. But more on that later. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at a few images showcasing what the original people looked like. The original Minoans, people of Crete, Greek, Etruscans, what have you. Okay, so now, brothers, sisters, this is a Greek vessel in the form of a youth licking his lips. 400 BC. And just to get the lies and narratives out of the way, they probably will tell you that this is a African slave that was found in Greece, or this is an African servant found in Greece. Some silly ass nonsense like that. So now here is a Greek silver coin. So here is a Greek youth. One more time, brothers. These are the original people. So here is a Minoan fresco. So here's it. So here's a Minoan fresco, and it shows you a man with fish. So here's the original appearance of a cupbearer from a Cretan fresco, or from the Cretan fresco, the procession. Here are some coins from the island of Lesbos. I wouldn't be surprised if they tell you that these are black African slaves that the Greeks put on their coins. These are some of the silly lies they're gonna come up with. So brothers, this is a Bronze Age fresco from the excavation site of Akrotiri on the Greek island of Santorini. It shows herds, shepherds and warriors, and the shipwreck scene on the bottom. So let's take a zoom in. You can see, brothers, all these figures here, people of color. So, brothers, here's an Etruscan relic. A lot of you brothers have already seen this one. Okay, so that's going to be it for part one. Hopefully that was an edifying lesson for you brothers, for you sisters. Now, for those of you who want to financially support me and this channel through donations and tips, you can support me on YouTube memberships, PayPal, or Patreon. With that being said, giving all praises to the Most High Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai. Deuces.